if you're having trouble, I could share it on my side as well, whatever's
Uh,
easiest.
yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Oh, I don't think it's I don't think it's sharing the audio. Do you want me to try it? I can do it from this side. It probably would be clearer than a streaming element, so.
So you want to share it?
Yeah, I'll share it on my screen. I think you should all be able to see it, I think.
Okay, okay, okay.
Let's see. Oh, I guess I need permission from you to share, unfortunately. You would have to click on the participants and say allow to share the screen.
Participant, which one?
I think if you click on participants and you click on my name, if you click on participants, which is at the bottom next to chat, to the left of chat, and then
Okay.
you'll see that both of our names come up, and then go to more.
Okay.
And you should be able to give me permission. Does it show enable sharing or allow something?
Show chat, stop video, make host, allow record, rename, put in waiting room, or remove or report.
I guess it's not allowing it.
Or maybe we can, I can share it in our Facebook fan page. So
sure, that's fine.
Okay. Can I start with introduce myself? Okay. I'm Ella Royanti Ruslan, the chairperson of the Voice of Young and Creative Minds organization. Is the NGO, and please allow me to speak a Malaysian language for the introduction. Saya merupakan moderator pada hari ini untuk forum yang bertajuk Directions in Filmmaking. Ya, panel jemputan kita pada hari ini ialah Jack Perez. Beliau merupakan pengarah filem dan televisyen di Hollywood. Beliau juga merupakan seorang penulis skrip dan juga seorang profesor di dalam bidang perfilman di salah sebuah universiti di Amerika Syarikat. Beliau pernah mengarah untuk siri TV yang terkemuka sebanyak 111 episod, iaitu Hercules The Legendary Journeys. Selain daripada itu, filem arahan beliau ialah Mega Shark vs Giant Octopus, dan ada banyak lagi filem arahan beliau. Jadi tanpa membuang masa, saya akan menepukual beliau di dalam bahasa Inggeris. Jack, so we would like to know why you choose to become a film director and television.
Well, I think it started with my father. My father was a cinephile. He was a movie fanatic. So, you know, one of the ways he expressed his love for me was to show me film after film after film since I was a little boy. So this was growing up in the 70s. And this was actually before we even had VHS or the ability to record. So oftentimes he would wake me up in the middle of the night because a movie was showing on television, and that was the only time the movie was on. He would say, "You have to see this." So he instilled in me a love of classic movies and movies in general. And as I got older, I started to make my own short films. In those days, families had what they called Super 8 movie cameras. So this was before video cameras. So Super 8 was a small film format. Maybe you remember your grandparents had Super 8 movie cameras, and it was very common for young kids interested in film in the 70s to borrow their family camera and start making their own film. So I made all these films with my sister. I, covered her in blood and made all kinds of monster movies with my little sister, who was sometimes happy to participate and sometimes she wasn't. As she got older, she didn't want to be in so many of my crazy movies. But I just got more and more interested in how films were made. And I started to research, going to the library and reading books on how special effects were done. And I was particularly taken by the original King Kong, the original film that was made in 1933, that used stop motion animation to create the monsters. And I was very interested in that. So I started making my own films. And then I realized that if I wanted to become a professional, that I would have to go to film school, or at least that was one of the ways to become a professional.
Yeah,
So that started me on that path. And then I ultimately went to film school. Yeah.
okay. So what is the differences between a film director and television director?
I think the main difference between a film director and a television director is, I think film directors have a little bit more influence on the look of the film and the style of the film. Sometimes when you're making a big studio film, like a Marvel movie or something like that, you have a lot of forces changing how you might do something creatively. But I work primarily in independent films, lower budget films. And there's more creative control in a film than, say, on a television show, where you have to sort of maintain the look of the show. Even though there are a lot of directors that come on a television show, every director must subscribe to a particular design. And so you kind of change the way you might make the story visually as a television director. So I worked in television and have worked in television throughout my career. And I found that in most cases, TV directing is much more a collaborative effort. And in many ways, you have to sort of listen more to what the producers, who are often the writers of those television shows, what they want the film or the TV show to look like. Whereas on a film, you're able to take possession of that film more. It's your film. Whereas a television show, it's not your show, it's their television show. So I think that's the main difference, is how much of an imprint the director can make on the story.
What are the key elements of a good story, in your opinion?
Well, that's a very subjective thing. I think that for me, it's always been the stories that are the most personal. I don't know how else to put that, but I think, when you read a book or you see a movie, whether you're a filmmaker or whether you're an audience member, you're looking to see, or most of us are looking to see ourselves reflected somehow in what we're watching. So for me, the best movies I've made are stories that I can personally relate to. It doesn't mean it has to be an autobiography, but whether it's a horror film or an action film, if the characters are characters that I understand, that I recognize, and the struggles of those characters are things that I can identify with, and that makes me a better filmmaker. I think on a more general note, and we teach this in film school, and I'm sure you remember these things, is that a good story is loaded with conflict. That conflict is really the source of all drama. And stories that don't have much conflict, and that doesn't mean that it has to be physical conflict, it can be emotional conflict, but it's conflict that creates tension and creates drama. And when that's absent from a story, that's when the story tends to get boring. So that's just what I happen to think. But
What is the screen direction? Why is screen direction important?
well, screen direction, if are you referring to the old 180-degree rule? Is that what you're talking about? So screen direction refers to a particular rule in cinema. It's one of the only rules that if followed, it helps. Screen direction basically refers to how you make it appear that two people are looking at each other. So if I'm looking at somebody in this direction, when you cut to the other person, they should be looking in this the opposite direction. If you do that, you get the illusion that people are looking. But if you do a shot of me looking and talking to somebody, and then you do a shot of the other person looking in the same direction, it looks like both people are looking off at something else. So there's something called the 180-degree line, which basically means that when two people are looking at each other, you draw an imaginary line between both people, and the camera must stay on one side of that line. So when you're shooting one side and you're shooting the other side, you don't jump the line. If you jump the line, you'll get two people looking the same way, and it makes it very difficult to cut. So oddly enough, people jump the line and break screen direction in action scenes, because action scenes have a certain chaos and a certain logic of their own. But in talking, when two people are talking to each other, screen direction is very important. If, in other words, if I was doing this, talking to you like this, it would feel weird, right? So we're maintaining screen direction right now. It looks like we're connecting. If I'm talking to you like this, it does not look like it feels weird, you know? So, but it's one of the only rules in cinema that works really well when you're doing a dialogue scene between two people. Yeah.
What a film director should know?
Everything. I think a really good film director should know everything about every aspect of filmmaking. I mean, a film director really needs to understand how to visualize a film, how to think in pictures, how to translate a script, which is just a bunch of words, into images. Because when you're on set, if you've made a film, a DP or the AD is going to say, director, Mr. Director or Madam Director, what's the next shot? And you should be able to say, well, I want to do a close-up, or I want to do an insert, or I want a dolly. So knowing the images that you're going to do, whether it's a shot list or storyboards that you bring to set, that's very, very important. Obviously, being able to communicate with actors is very important. If an actor is not delivering the performance in a way that is right for the script or the way you imagine it, you have to be able to communicate with an actor so that you can adjust the performance and get the performance that you need. And then, of course, the director needs to understand story, and a director needs to understand the story that he's making. So to your earlier point about what makes a good story, I mean, a director should understand, you know, when a story is working, when it isn't working, and how he can fix that. But in general, I think great directors understand cinematography. They certainly understand editing, because that's where everything that you do is going to go. It's going to go into this final stage of cutting together, which is critical. So if you don't, the more you understand about all the technical aspects of filmmaking, I always say the more confidence you'll have as a director. Otherwise, you're always going to depend on other people to magically make the movie work. And you'll just sit back and go, well, I hope the DP fixes it, or I hope the editor can make it look like a movie, or I hope the writer writes a good script, or I hope the actors do it right. I'll just sit here and go action and cut. And, you know, so it's not about being perfect, but it's about learning what goes on in each of these areas. So when I was in film school, I made it a point to try to do everything I did sound on somebody's movie. I shot somebody's movie. I acted and so I did it so that I would be less afraid of these things, so that I could direct or lead with a bit of authority. So that's my own personal theory about what a director needs to know.
How important education in film director career?
I'm sorry, you broke up there, Ella. What was that?
I
didn't hear the question.
How important education in film director career?
Education?
Yes.
You mean as in films, as an education in film school?
I mean, how important education in film director career?
I mean, if you mean education in the sense of going to school, I think it depends on the director. I mean, I definitely benefited from getting a film education at film school because it taught me about things that I didn't know. It introduced me to films I didn't know about. It introduced me to certain principles of storytelling and directing that I didn't understand. But I don't think it's absolutely necessary. I think that there's so much information now online, on YouTube and on film. There are many, many sites that provide very good, detailed information on all aspects of film directing. So in many ways, you don't have to go to film school. If you're a diligent researcher, you can very easily experience or learn what you would learn in film school, a lot of it. I think the next thing is really self-educating in the sense that you make as many films as you possibly can, because each time you make a film, each time you come up with a shot, each time you write a script, each time you cut 2 shots together, you learn to become more fluent in the language of film. Film is just like any other language, and you know, for those of us that speak more than one language, you know that when you're first learning another language, it's very difficult. You just want to be understood. But if you keep speaking it, you become more confident, you become more fluent, you're able to express yourself a little bit more eloquently. My family, on both sides of my family, they didn't speak English. You know, I was the first generation to learn English. So I know what it is how difficult it is to express yourself. And film is a language, so you have to keep speaking it to be any good at it. So I think that's probably the most important thing of all.
The next question, what is the challenge and difficulties for a film director to direct the low budget films?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question. When you make a low budget film, you have to be very creative about how to solve all the challenges that you face in making a film. I mean, and a film has challenges from the very beginning, which is everything from who you cast in the movie, to what locations you pick, to what film equipment, what camera equipment you're going to need to make a particular shot, whether it's a crane or a Steadicam if you want to move. And in big budget movies, they just have money that they just throw money at it. So money solves those problems. But when you're making a low budget movie, you usually don't have a lot of money. So you have to think very creatively about what do I really need to create this shot? If I don't have all of these resources, then how can I create a dramatic effect simply? I think probably the biggest challenge you have with a low budget movie is time. The lower the budget, the fewer number of days you have to shoot a movie. And time is like gold on a movie. If you have 50 days to make a feature film, that's a lot different than if you have 10 days to make a feature film. It's the same script. Well, that means that you have to move a lot faster, and that you have to make very quick decisions, and you have to do a lot fewer shots. So for example, some directors make a lot of shots for one scene. They may do 12, 15 different setups for a scene. And if you're in a low budget movie and you only have a little bit amount of time, you don't have time to do all those shots. So you have to be very selective and go, okay, we're going to do 5 shots or 4 shots, and that's it. And that's why I think it's very important like going back to your earlier question about understanding editing. Because if you understand that you only really need 4 shots to make the scene work, then when you shoot those 4 shots, you understand, okay, I don't need all that other stuff. These are the shots that I really need. So it's about learning to work very quickly and learning to, but there's an old expression, which is necessity is the mother of invention, which means that when you don't have what you need, you come up with more creative ideas than if you had all the money in the world. So I think that's true. I think I've been forced to come up with creative solutions to problems that I wouldn't have had to do if someone had just given me a lot more money. And So sometimes I enjoy that, but I do wish sometimes, I always wish that I had a few more days because you can work a little bit more calmly, you know, as opposed to, you know, running all the time. So that's what I would say about low budget filmmaking. But I think the good thing about low budget filmmaking, going back to your earlier question about television and the difference between television directing and feature films, is that even if you have little money and few days on a low budget feature film, you still have the control. You usually have the control, the creative control. And I think that's probably the most important thing, you know, because if you can do as an artist what you want to do, that's the real joy. That's the real freedom. And so that's the trade-off. Sometimes you have a ton of money and it's a big studio movie, but you're not being able to express yourself as an artist. So that's the trade-off, you know, I've found.
What skill do we need to be a film director?
I'm sorry, what's the question again, Ella?
Uh,
What's the question?
What skill that do we need to be a film director?
Well, I think it's what I said earlier. I think skills, I think, you know, is understanding filmmaking and trying to understand all the different aspects of filmmaking. So I really encourage people who want to be film directors to do what I did as a young filmmaker, which is to try to work in as many different crew positions, because it gives you a real understanding of the whole process. And if you're going to be a leader, which is the job of a film director, you're the general. You're the one that everybody is looking to and saying, how are we going to do this? If you're the one that's supposed to answer those questions, then it's good to educate yourself by learning how the whole thing works. And when you do that, you gain a lot of respect from the people that are working with you, because they look at you as a worker, not just somebody who gives orders. You know how it is when you have a boss that has done your job, you have much more respect for them than a boss who just says, I'm the boss, do what I say. So learning as many of them. But again, I think probably the two really important things to focus on are cinematography and editing, because those are the beginning. The shot originates with cinematography and it ends with how it's cut together. So if you understand those two sort of worlds, you'll have a very good handle on the whole thing. So that's what I think.
And we want to know how to get into the film industry, I mean in Hollywood.
Well, that's a very good question. I think it's different for everybody. Hollywood is not necessarily about recognizing talent. I mean, some people think that if you go to Hollywood and you're talented, then someone will discover you and either give you a job as a film director or give you a job as an actor or a writer. Hollywood's a business that wants to make money off of the people working in the business. So I think Hollywood is the way to work in Hollywood or to break into Hollywood is to have something to sell. Certainly you have yourself to sell. If you're a filmmaker, you can say, well, these are my films. I mean, I think it's good to have a film to show, to demonstrate that you can do the job. Sometimes it's not enough to have a short film. Oftentimes it's more important that you've demonstrated that you can make a feature film before somebody hires you to. So even if you make a very, very low budget feature film, at least you can prove that, hey, I made a 90-minute movie, I can do this. If you say, here's a 5-minute movie, and a producer goes, well, I don't know, can he do a 2-hour movie? How do I know he can do that? So in some ways it's about proving that you can do the job before they hire you to do the job. Also having a screenplay that people want to produce. That's another way of doing it. If you have a script that is commercial and something that the studios or the production companies want to make, that's a way in, because they're always looking for a script that they can make. If you own that script, then you have it's what they call a bargaining chip. You can sell that script. Maybe you can attach yourself to that script as a director. But the thing about Hollywood is that there's no real set specific. If you do this, and you do this, then you become a Hollywood film director. It's very much about going there and trying to do everything you can to meet as many people as you can and to have something that you want to sell. I think you have to think about how can they benefit from me? It's not about them like going, "Ooh, you're so talented. Let me help you." Nobody wants to help you. They just want to profit off of you in some way. I didn't know that when I went to Hollywood in 1990. But I think the thing I always wanted to do was I always wanted to find a way to work. I just wanted to find a way to work. So I did every kind of job. And I tried everything, and just to work in the business, just so I could meet people. And all along I was planning my own independent feature films, so that even if I didn't get hired by Hollywood people, I always knew that I was going to make my own movies, whether I had to raise the money or find money somewhere or whatever. And so I was always working towards that while I was doing jobs for hire. And so, it's a gamble, the whole business is a very risky business, but if you have the passion and that's what you want to do, then it's worth trying it and seeing if it's for you.
How the politics of the film industry works in America?
Well, I think there's certainly a lot of politics in Hollywood filmmaking. I think it comes down to two things. One is ego, which is there are a lot of egos in Hollywood. And part of the game of playing politics is not telling people what you really think of them or telling them that their ideas are bad when you really think they're bad. And when I was a young filmmaker in Hollywood, I was very honest. And honesty does not get you jobs. Someone gives you their notes, say on a script, and you think they're terrible notes, and they probably are, it doesn't help you politically to say, "Ella, your notes are terrible. This is not going to work." The people in power want to hear that their ideas are good. So there's a certain amount of lying that's involved in order to get where you need to go. I didn't do that all the time. And maybe that's true in any business, The other thing is money. I think that what helps the most politically in Hollywood is if your films make money. The more money your movies make, the more power you get as a filmmaker, the bigger your budgets. And so if you look at the people that are the most successful in Hollywood, it's those people whose films have made the most money. It's not about the best movies. It's just about the movies that have made the most money. So I have friends of mine who made movies that were successful. Like I had a friend who made a movie, his first Hollywood movie, made a good amount of money, but then he didn't work for 2 years. I was like, what happened? And he goes, "Well, I made money, but I didn't make a lot of money." Whereas I had another friend whose film made a lot of money and he worked immediately. That's what is respected because it is a business. And so producers are more willing to take a chance on somebody who has turned a profit than somebody who hasn't. So, it's unfortunately that's the real big rule of Hollywood politics. Is like, well, find a way to have your movies make money, but nobody can guarantee that. There's a lot of luck involved too. You can make a great movie that doesn't make any money, and so that's at least my feeling about it.
Is the career in film industry realistic?
Well, it's realistic because people work, and there's millions of people that work in the film industry. So people have careers. I've been very lucky. I've been able to work in the film business, you know, for about 30 years. So is it realistic? Yes, it's realistic in that it happens to plenty of people. But you need to have a certain mindset and a certain commitment, and you have to be patient.
Uh,
And I think more than anything, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ella, what were you going to say?
are you happy with your career now?
What's that?
Are you happy with your career now?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know if I guess when I look back on things that I've accomplished, I'm very grateful and happy for the films that I've been able to make, and the opportunities that I've had, and the success that I've had. I'm very grateful for that. But I also think that there's something in the filmmaker that is always looking at the next project. You know, in a way, there's something in the wiring in the brain that is hungry for the next thing. So like right now, it's been a couple of years since I've made a feature film, and I'm very anxious and wanting to make the next movie. So at this moment, I think I'd be happier if I was making a movie right now. But I am very grateful for the films that I've made. I've made, you know, 12 feature films and a number of television shows. And so I have had and continue to have a life in film, but I always have my eye on the next project.
Uh, so what advice would you give to aspiring the youth and young filmmakers, especially Malaysians, who wants to become a great film director?
Yeah, I just think that it starts with, well, it has to start with finding a story that you feel deeply about. You know, I don't think it's enough to try to copy. A lot of filmmakers copy the films that they like, and that's fine. And I think that's, as a student or when you're making short films, imitating the style or the stories of the films that you like is very natural, and we all do that. But I think if you're going to become a professional film director, I think you have to find a way of, it sounds pretentious, but you have to find your voice as a filmmaker. So whether you write the script yourself or whether you work with a writer, I think it's important to try to create a low budget, very low budget, because none of us have a lot of money, create a very low budget feature film that is something that you are dying to make, that connects to you in a personal way. Because if it does connect to you, if it's something that you care deeply about, nothing will stop you in making that movie. And it will also be the most original thing you can make because it comes from you. It's not a copy of something. And that actually gives that film value. I mean, what gives a film value is when it's an original voice, when it is distinctive, when it feels like it could only come from that filmmaker, you know? So I would try to find a way of writing something that you know that you can make for very little money, that demonstrates your abilities as a filmmaker and your personal interests in story, and demonstrates your style as a filmmaker. And then you'll know whether you're a real film director, because whether the film gets into festivals or whether it makes a lot of money, you'll know that, yes, this is something that I want to do professionally. I want to commit to doing this. And practically, it may help you get the money to make another movie, because they say, okay, look at this. I see what this person can do. Yes, I want to invest in this person. So I think if you're going to be a feature film director, you have to make the leap from short film to small independent feature. You know, it's like running. If you run a marathon, 26 miles, you don't just run 1 mile and you run 26 miles. You have to run, distances have to become longer. So I think you need to try to make a feature. a 90-minute movie. See if you can run that marathon, you know? And look, it's like, and find a story that you know that's not going to cost you a lot of money. Don't try to do Star Wars, you know, for a couple of $1,000s, but maybe you can get locations that are your friends or your family's locations, or a business that wants to help, you know, like use the resources that you have to make the movie look bigger. And you don't have to come to Hollywood to make a low budget movie. In fact, I think it's better to make a movie, a low budget independent movie, your first movie, at home, where you have friends and family and support, you know, where people will want to help you, to give you that emotional support. And then you'll know. I think that's the next big step, you know, and that's the course. Of course, that's the path I took. So that's really the only one I can speak to. But that's what I think.
Okay, we end the conversations now. So we hope that we can meet you again in another conversation. Maybe I don't know when. So nice talk with you. Very nice discussions, and I will upload this conversation video in the YouTube and also other media socials. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye.
Oh, no, thank you so much. No, thank you. Take care.
Okay,
Thanks
take
again.
care. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.